Welcome everyone. The title of this video is The First Resurrection. This video is made for everyone that is interested. The first resurrection is brought up in Scripture in Revelation chapter 20. Number 1, what is the first resurrection? Number 2, when is it? Number 3, why is it brought up here in chapter 20 is the subject of our inquiry. We know the book of Revelation is written in chronological order. I'm not including the letters at the beginning of the book of Revelation. We know the timeline begins with chapter 4. That's when John was told to come up here. First, where are we in the tribulation timeline if we are here in chapter 20? Everyone on earth is dead, the saints are in heaven, and the earth is burned. And it is the beginning of a 1,000 year time period which we are getting to in chapter 20. Now in Revelation chapter 20 verse 5 it says, this is the first resurrection. Let's take a look at that. In this case, we need to look at the context the verse is written in, which would be Revelation chapter 20 verses 1 through 7. If you look at these verses, there is one underlying theme, which is a 1,000 year time period. These verses tell us some of what will happen during the 1,000 years. Okay, verses 1 through 3 set up a 1,000 year time period in which Satan is bound and cast into a bottomless pit. The next verses 4 through 7 tell us the fate of the saints and the sinners during this 1,000 years. Verse 4 mentions martyrs and also some others, doesn't say who, that were sitting on thrones and given the power to judge. And they both lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. If you look at that verse carefully, you will see that it is talking about two distinct sets of people, martyrs and those sitting on thrones with the power to judge. Verse 5 talks about the rest of the dead. Live not again till the 1,000 years are finished. These are the ungodly that were slain in chapter 19, but also includes the rest of the ungodly dead since the beginning of mankind. And then it says this is the first resurrection. The verse is not saying that the rest of the dead are part of the first resurrection. These are two separate sentences, and a new subject is started. We know this because verse 6 says, those who have part in the first resurrection are blessed and holy. And also verse 6 says, those who hath part in the first resurrection shall reign with Christ 1,000 years. So those described in verse 5 as the rest of the dead, verse 5 says, did not live during the 1,000 years, so they are not blessed or holy, and did not live with Christ during the 1,000 years. So they are simply the ungodly. Not just those slain in chapter 19 by the rider on the white horse, but all the ungodly since the beginning of mankind. In verse 7, the last verse which mentions the 1,000 years tells us Satan will be freed from the bottomless pit after the 1,000 years are finished. Then, not related to our inquiry, verses 8 through 10 tell us what Satan does after the 1,000 years, and verses 11 through 15 tell us about the great white throne judgment. Okay, now for a quick overview of chapter 20. Satan is bound for 1,000 years, and at the beginning of the 1,000 years, martyrs who were killed by the Antichrist are seen in heaven. Also given to some are thrones and the power to judge, and they live with Christ during the 1,000 years. Then it says the ungodly remain dead during the 1,000 years, because they live not again until the 1,000 years are finished. Then it says this is the first resurrection, that they are all blessed and holy and live and reign with God and Christ 1,000 years. And next it says Satan is freed after the 1,000 years. Okay, verse 5 brings up the first resurrection, and verse 6 tells us who is in the first resurrection and where they are during the 1,000 years. They are the saints, all the saints, and they live and reign with Christ during the 1,000 years. Blessed and holy are those in the first resurrection. But the resurrection did not happen here in chapter 20. The first resurrection happened at the second coming. And these verses are telling us where the saints will be during the 1,000 years. Notice it does not say there is a resurrection here. No, it doesn't. It says this is the first resurrection, then it tells you who took part in the resurrection and where they are. First resurrection happened at the second coming. It does not say the living and dead saints go to heaven here in chapter 20. It does not say Jesus comes here in chapter 20. It does not say the angels gather the elect here in chapter 20. This verse just tells us where the saints and sinners are during the 1,000 years. We are in chapter 20. That means no one is alive on earth. Everyone on the earth is dead, killed by the rider on the white horse, because in the previous chapter, chapter 19, verse 18 and 21 says so. It says all people. That means all. The saints were not on earth in chapter 19. The saints were not on the earth, or they would have been killed. And as you know, the verse that says the living shall not precede the dead when Christ returns. Well, Christ just got through returning again on a white horse in chapter 19, and there was nothing about any saints alive or dead going to heaven. It was at the second coming, which is in chapter 14, verse 14. So in chapter 20, at this point, it has already happened. All the saints are already in heaven. Verse 6 is telling us where the saints will spend the 1,000 years. That's in heaven. Okay, one thing is the wedding of the Lamb took place in chapter 19, verse 7 and 8. And if you are a saint here on earth in chapter 20, that means you missed it. And that ends my explanation of the first resurrection. Now, there are no Christians on the earth after the second coming. There are no Christians mentioned on the earth in Revelation after the second coming. There are Christians mentioned in heaven before and after the second coming. Okay, those in the first resurrection will be priests of God and of Christ and shall reign with him for 1,000 years. This verse confirms, as you know, we will spend the 1,000-year millennium in heaven, not on earth. No one will be left on earth after the rider on the white horse. As you know, it says he kills them all. So where would they come from? You also know this earth shall be burned up. The new kingdom, it will be on a new earth with the new Jerusalem. No old Jerusalem will exist. Okay, Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. John 18:36. Not of this earth. We will have a new heaven and a new earth. And we will not leave heaven till after the 1,000 years when the new earth is made. And I will end this video here. Thank everyone for watching.